Hey everyone, quick shout out to all my walkaway family. Love you guys. I love the support. These past couple weeks have just been totally overwhelming with all the feedback that I'm getting. I love the positive feedback. I love the constructive, civil, negative feedback. Again, you can disagree with me. I don't care. It's all about respectful conversation and civil discussions. So if you've come here for a walkaway update, I am going to have that in the description below. But this week, I actually wanted to talk about my first passion, which is mental health awareness and suicide prevention. Specifically, I really need to thank one of my subscribers. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but Matt, if you're listening, thank you. Thank you for not only your dedication and your sacrifice to all of us, but thank you for inspiring me to talk about this today. Suicide prevention is something that is really important to me as someone who lives with a mental health condition and has survived a suicide attempt. I have dedicated the last, 2 to 3 years of my professional and personal life to raising awareness, to trying to help people, trying to talk to people. So in that vein, I really wanted to talk today about what's going on with our veterans. So this past June, the Veterans Administration released their latest findings on suicide rates among veterans in the VA National Suicide Data Report. And you're going to have to bear with me because I'm doing another one in front of my laptop. I've got the report here in front of me, and I really want to make sure that I'm delivering accurate information. I'm going to have links to all my sources and all the things that I refer people to or talk about. Everything's going to be cited and resourced below, so I'm not going to bog you down by spelling out my sources. Most of what I'm going to tell you is taken directly from the data report. This report covered the years between 2005 and 2015, and I do want to just say on giving the VA some credit. They've really ramped up their mental health efforts, especially the last couple years. So I think the next report that comes out, the data is going to be much lower. Unfortunately, though, this time around, a lot of the averages have stayed the same, and some others have risen, which we're also going to talk about. So I think the most important thing to note is that the VA actually provided additional clarity on where they get the average that we've all seen online and in PSAs, that around 20 to 22 veterans die every day from suicide. So as I said, that number hasn't changed, but what has changed is their revelation of who's included in this statistic. That around 20 suicides a day number doesn't only include veterans. It also includes active duty service members and non-active National Guard or Reserve members. Now, to me, that doesn't really change anything. It just reflects, and I don't like saying this word, but it reflects an overall failure of mental health support services for anyone involved in the military. But again, things have changed the last couple years. So this critique is not of the resources that are available today. So overall, men in general are the biggest demographic affected by suicide. In the general U.S. population, the suicide rate for men is 3 times higher than the suicide rate for women. This new VA report, after adjusting for differences in age, states the rate of suicide in 2015 was 2 times higher among veterans compared with non-veterans. And then broken down by gender, this shows a pretty alarming trend, and getting into this, I really hope my female subscribers are paying attention right now. So after adjusting for differences in age, the rate of suicide in 2015 was 1.3 times higher among male veterans compared with non-veteran men. However, the rate of suicide is now 2 times higher among female veterans compared with non-veteran women. So what do all those numbers mean? This means the overall statistic that men are more impacted by suicide than women, it still holds true. And it means that while women are what we talk about in my line of work, and I'll include links to these statistics, but these specific ones are off the top of my head. But women are more statistically likely to attempt suicide. Men are far more likely to do so successfully. This holds true for both veterans and non-veterans. And what this new report is showing us is that female veterans are catching up. And it's directly tied in to more service women taking a cue from their male counterparts. So traditionally, women are more likely to choose suicide by poison or overdose. That was my method. Whereas men are more likely to hang themselves or use firearms. And it's because of this that the suicide completion rate among men is so high. But this new VA report could mean that because adult women who are also veterans are showing increased completion rates, this is probably directly because they have more access to firearms than their civilian counterparts. In 2015, the percent of suicide deaths among veterans that involve firearms is 67%. Now don't get this twisted. I'm in no way saying that one method of suicide is better than the other. None of them are. There's no 100% foolproof method to suicide. People jump off bridges and buildings, survive all the time. People shoot themselves in the head, survive, live the rest of their lives horrifically disfigured. Even hanging doesn't work all the time. I don't want to go into a whole lot of personal details, but I do know someone that unsuccessfully tried to hang themselves and is now going to be living in a wheelchair for the rest of their lives. So no method is better than any other. Figuratively, they're all bad. Stay. I want you to stay. I want you to work it out. Even my method of overdosing has its own ramifications. My doctors have explained to me I did some pretty serious damage to my kidneys, and I probably took several years off of my life. So no method is a good method. And I'm not saying we need increased gun control either. To me, it doesn't make sense to punish law-abiding citizens because a few of us have mental health issues. But what it does mean is that our veterans need help, and the government is not doing enough. Veterans need our voices, they need our attention, but more importantly, they need our time. And my connection to veterans goes back to my father. He's a lot older than my mom, and he served in the Air Force in Vietnam. He met his first wife there, and he had my 3 older siblings. But by the time he met and married my mother, he was retired from active duty, and we were actually living permanently in Southern California. My dad didn't talk a whole lot about his experiences. I think it was a touchy subject for him. He was not on the front. He was actually an officer, and if I'm looking at it now as an adult, I have to admit, I think the reason he doesn't like to talk about it is because he feels like his effort wasn't as great as the efforts of the men that he saw. My dad worked in a hospital. He wasn't a medical professional. He was part of the administrative staff. And I think for him, seeing these men come into the hospital that were injured, I'll just say that, I think there's a part of him that feels like somehow his effort wasn't as important as theirs, and so growing up he never really talked about being in the military. I wish that he were a little more open to it today, because I'd really like to tell him how important his effort really was. Just because he wasn't on the front, just because he wasn't sewing men up, it doesn't mean he wasn't helping out. It doesn't mean he wasn't helping his brothers. I hope that he'll eventually come to realize that. But my real sympathy, my dedication to helping veterans who struggle with mental health issues, that's a little more recent. That came from working at a suicide prevention hotline, and so doing that work, I've spoken to countless veterans over the past few years. They've been kind enough to allow me to talk to them, even though I have no personal military experience. And you know, the majority of time, these men and women have admitted to me that they resort to using civilian lifelines because they don't feel the VA crisis line is always totally there for them. And just to I'm not trying to throw things off on the VA or put the VA in a bad light. I think the issue with that crisis line is that it's an all-encompassing crisis line. So any veteran in crisis at any time, whether it's a mental health crisis or a financial one or a medical one, they call the same number. So more often than not, you're getting counselors that are juggling multiple hats, they're handling multiple lines, and unfortunately it means that through, in my opinion, no real fault of their own, other than maybe the fault of being overworked, but they don't always have the time to listen the way that I'm sure their callers would wish they did. And if you're a caller that has that feeling about the line, I would, you know, reiterate that is just consider how much those people on the other line have to do. So you may not be able to have a really good crisis call, and I don't think that should dissuade you from calling. If you're a veteran and you specifically need to call someone that can talk to you about veterans issues, call the VA crisis line. If you're a veteran that is in the middle of a crisis and needs someone to talk them off the proverbial or literal ledge, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. There's someone there 24 hours a day. They may not know exactly what you're going through, but they can help you. So maybe volunteering in a crisis line isn't your thing. That's understandable. That's not for everybody. But what can you do? What can you do to help your veterans? You can speak up. You can become an advocate for better mental health services. You can volunteer. The VA has this really cool campaign called #BeThere, and I'm going to link down to it below. They've got this awesome list that totally does all the hard work for you and helps you figure out what you can do. They've even got that list broken down by how much time you have to offer. So definitely use that resource. Because they need us. They need our physical time. They need our direct care. Again, you can volunteer at your local lifeline. I'll put a link to how to do that below as well. But if speaking to someone actively in crisis is too much, you could consider volunteering at your local veterans home or your local veterans clinic. The one thing that I would stress to anyone who's considering donating money would be to stay local. National organizations, they're fighting for veterans. These places are just so huge. They have such exorbitant operating costs. In reality, the money you're donating, in all likelihood, it's not going where you'd want it to. So that's why I urge everybody stay local. Donating to local charities and nonprofits is it's always more transparent. You'll have a better idea of where your money's going, and you've got the peace of mind of knowing that your money's directly benefiting the people or the veterans that live in your area. All right, I'm going long, I'm sorry. So just to sum up all the stuff I've just thrown at you, while we may see a decrease in veteran suicides in the next VA report, it doesn't change the fact that the government is failing our vets when it comes to their mental health. That means that it's up to the rest of us to pick up the slack. These are men and women who, they didn't just put their safety on the line. They've put their skills, their talents, their professional efforts, they've all gone to preserving our rights and freedoms. Sorry guys, my boyfriend's home, my dogs are going crazy. That is my Chihuahua, sir. Derver. That's enough, buddy. So, whether you agree, I'll sum up since these dogs are not going to be quiet. Whether you agree with war or not, these people need our help. They need more than our voices. They need to know that you mean it, that you want to help them, that you're listening, that you're paying attention, that we care, and that we want them to stay. So if you're someone that's actively in crisis, call the Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. You can stay on the line for the next available counselor, or if you're a veteran, you can press 1, and that's going to take you to the VA crisis line. There's people there 24/7 that want to talk to you. Sometimes I'm one of them. So if you've made it this far, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for listening to my dogs. And thank you again to Matt for inspiring me to talk about this. Again, I'm going to have tons of resources and links. So thank you everyone for listening, and just be excellent to each other. Be kind.